So in the next example, we're going to actually allow the user to modify the chart. And we're going to do that by providing a drop-down selector. Okay, so what we've done with these line plots, obviously, we've done this quite a lot now, is segment the data so that we can look at a particular section of lines. So the high volume or the low volume or the medium volume. And what would be useful is to allow the user to decide which ones they want to look at. And we're going to do that by providing a drop-down list where they can select that. So here's the code that creates the chart. Okay, so this is, as I said, this is a Python function. You may, if you're not that familiar with Python, this def just means I'm defining a function, and the function is called getLinePlot, and the information it's passed is just the volume. Okay, which could be, it's just going to be a word meaning high, saying high, low, medium, or you know, or very, what was the other one? Very low volume. Okay, and so if the volume is passed into this function is high, then it selects A, F, and L, and if it's medium, it selects G, H, J, and S, and so on. So it determines which set of lines to look at depending on what word is passed into it, high, medium, low, or very low. Then it just restricts the data to that particular data. Sorry, it creates a data frame that restricts the data to that particular data frame, and then it does a line plot for that data frame. Okay, so and the volume is then chosen by the user by using a drop-down list and passed in. So how do we do that? Well, here's the controlling code. This is obviously a little bit more complicated than previously. Most of it is the same. The title, this row is more or less the same, and the row is servable. The different bits are this bit here and this bit here, and also we've got to pass in the volume to both those functions. So what do we do here? First of all, we're going to create a widget, and widget. When I say widget just means some sort of visual item that you're very familiar with, because you'll have seen them on websites or on any bit of software you use. Buttons are widgets, drop-down lists are widgets, scroll bars, sliders, radio buttons, those kind of things, checkboxes, they're all widgets. So we can create those. And this select widget is a drop-down list, which is, we've called it volume, and the possible options are this list of words. Okay, so we create this drop-down list with this list of words in the drop-down. Why don't I show you that? Okay, if I run this on all, there's the drop-down list here. So that creates a drop-down that the user can select. Okay, and then we need to include that in the left-hand column. So remember, we create a column of items. So the left-hand column is the title, and then the volume, this drop-down selector. Okay, so that's included in that column. So we create a row, but the first item in the row is this column of the title and the drop-down. And then what we need to do, that if you just do that, it sort of feels like that might work, but it's not quite enough, because you've got to watch to see what the user does. So with these type of GUIs, you've got to see what the code here, or this bit of display has got to spot when the user changes the drop-down. And the way we do that is with this function called update time, and it just so here we watch that update. Sorry, we watch the volume selector, and when it's changed, then we use the update time function to call the new line plot. Okay, so when the user, let's go back to the picture. When the user selects something here, medium, you'll see that all the lines change. what happens, we're watching that, or the code is watching that volume selector. Volume, remember, is the drop-down list. It watches it, and what it's told to do is when it changes, it uses the update time function, this one here, to update the plot. So what does the update time function do? It creates a new line plot, getting the value from the drop-down list, and it puts that in this row in the second item in the row. So remember, the row is the column and then the plot, so it puts it in the plot position. So it just replaces whatever the initial plot was with this new plot. Okay, and that's what it looks like when it's finished. So if you're not a programmer, this is slightly complicated code, but it's not doing anything too difficult. It's here we've just created this drop down, so that's fairly straightforward. You just decide what those values are going to be, and then those values get passed in by this function here. This function here that passes the value of the volume selector, passes it into the function called getLinePlot, which we created. So then the getLinePlot, which was on the previous slide, has to just decide what to do with that particular volume. So, and in this case, it's just a word. If it's high and it selects, then it selects a particular set of columns. So the way that looks then, as I said, is the user can select something here. And now, of course, this is now much more interactive in the sense that the user selects the chart that they want to look at. So they want to look at the high volume. Previously, if we wanted to do this, we'd have to provide 4 different charts or maybe 4 subplots for a single chart. Now the user can decide what they want to look at and zoom in to, oops, you need to do that, zoom in to the bit that they're interested in. Okay, so it gives them much more control over what's going on in the chart. Notice that when I select a new chart, the zoom is reset because it's just creating a brand new chart. If you remember the code, this code just creates a brand new line plot whenever the user selects a different item on the drop-down list. Okay, let's finish that video there, and then I think we'll move on to the next example where we add a slider as well.